Anna Clara adjusted her thick coat as she felt the cool evening breeze in the Jardin des Fleurs neighborhood. The full moon illuminated the quiet streets, giving the place a serene atmosphere. Max, her Doberman, trotted beside her, alert as always. Since she had adopted Max 3 years ago, these evening walks had become a sacred ritual. After the death of her husband, he had become her loyal protector and indispensable companion. As they walked, Anna Clara observed the contrast in the neighborhood, once known for its tranquility, now on edge due to rumors of recent muggings. But she wasn't afraid. With Max by her side, she felt safe. He wasn't just a dog, he was a partner with a mysterious past. That night, something felt different. Max, who usually walked at a steady pace, suddenly stopped, ears perked up, and let out a low growl. Anna Clara frowned. "What's wrong, Max?" she asked, crouching down to stroke his muzzle. He didn't respond, but his gaze was fixed on something in the distance. The sound of footsteps, almost inaudible, echoed in the deserted street. "Let's go home. I think we've walked enough for today," she murmured, trying to shake off the unease creeping over her. When she gently tugged on his collar, Max resisted, which was unusual for him. With a swift movement, he turned toward a nearby alley, as if sniffing something out. Anna Clara didn't know it yet, but in that moment, the history of the neighborhood and her life was about to change. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Max, whom she thought was just a shelter dog, was showing signs of his hidden past. A past that, as she would later discover, involved police training. She remembered the day a former police officer had recognized Max during one of their park visits. "That one belonged to our elite team," the man had said, pointing at Max. "One of the best sniffers we ever had. Rigorous training, lots of courage. I don't know how he ended up in a shelter." At the time, she hadn't paid much attention. After all, Max was her buddy, and his past seemed irrelevant. But now his rigid stance and low growl suggested something was very wrong. As Anna Clara hurried home, Max kept looking over his shoulder, as if he knew something, or someone was following them. In that moment, she heard it, the sudden crack of a broken twig. Her heart raced. She wasn't alone on this seemingly quiet street. "Max," she whispered, her hand gripping his collar tightly. Max positioned himself in front of her, his body tense like a coiled spring. The street was about to reveal its secrets, and Anna Clara had no idea that this would be the first of many nights where Max would prove he was much more than just a companion dog. Anna Clara gripped Max's collar even tighter as her eyes scanned the street, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. The tension in the air was palpable, and the silence of the night seemed to amplify even the smallest noises. Max, on the other hand, remained motionless, ears flattened and gaze fixed on the alley. His behavior wasn't random. Max seemed to have activated a part of himself that Anna Clara had never seen before, a sharp, protective instinct. It was as if the trained reflexes of a police dog had taken over. Her heart raced. She knew Max wasn't just any dog, but it was still surprising to see him so determined to protect her. In that moment, Anna Clara vividly remembered the day she had learned about Max's past. During one of their morning walks in the park, a man who later introduced himself as Sergeant Oliveira had excitedly approached her. "I know this dog," he said, his eyes narrowing as he observed Max. "You know him?" Anna Clara asked, confused. "I don't know where from, but he was part of our K9 team. Elite police, ma'am. I worked with him for years. We called him Maximus. This boy here saved lives. He was a hero." At the time, she had been fascinated, but didn't dwell on it. After all, Max was just a dog who needed love and a home. She had adopted him from a shelter where he had been left without explanation, and since then, he had changed her life. But now, seeing him in action, she realized she couldn't ignore Max's past. Back on the dark street, Max's instincts were in full alert. He sniffed the air, growled softly, and his muscles were tense like ropes about to snap. Anna Clara tried to push down the fear rising in her chest. "Calm down, Max. Maybe it's just a cat," she whispered, more to reassure herself than the dog. In that moment, she saw them. 3 silhouettes slowly emerging from the darkness. Suspicious-looking men in baggy clothes and hoods moved silently down the narrow street, clearly not expecting to encounter anyone. When they noticed Anna Clara, they stopped abruptly, and the tension in the air became suffocating. One of them stepped forward, a sly smile spreading across his face. "Good evening, ma'am. It's a bit late to be wandering around here, don't you think?" he said, his voice menacing. Anna Clara froze. Max, however, took a step forward, positioning himself between her and the men. He wasn't growling anymore. Now he was fully focused, his eyes locked on the leader of the group. "You should back off," Anna Clara said firmly, despite her fear. The man laughed, and the two others followed suit. "And what are you going to do? Will that dog bite us?" he mocked. Before any of them could react, Max let out a powerful bark that echoed down the street. The men took a step back, startled by the strength and authority of the sound. It wasn't an ordinary bark. It was a command, a clear warning that they were dealing with a trained opponent. The two other men began to whisper among themselves, clearly uncomfortable. The leader, however, seemed determined not to back down. "It's just a dog. Let's not miss this opportunity," he muttered. Max, as if understanding the conversation, crouched slightly, ready to pounce. Anna Clara held on to his collar, feeling that she couldn't hold him back if he decided to attack. Her breath caught in her throat. "Please don't do this," she pleaded. The leader took another step, but it was his last. Max lunged forward, standing nose to nose with him, baring his teeth and letting out a guttural growl that made the two other men retreat immediately. "This dog is crazy," one of them shouted, visibly frightened. "Shut up. He's just barking," the leader retorted, though his voice betrayed his doubt. Max didn't just bark. He was ready. As Anna Clara watched, she remembered Sergeant Oliveira's words. This dog was trained to protect. No matter what happens, he will never hesitate. This truth was now undeniable. Max wasn't just a companion, he was a protector, and tonight he would prove it once again. Max stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the leader, ready to react to the slightest hostile movement. Anna Clara felt her heart racing. Fear was taking over, while the robbers seemed indecisive. The silence on the street was broken only by Max's deep, menacing growl, a sound that vibrated like a final warning. "The dog is dangerous, boss. Let's get out of here," one of the men whispered nervously. The leader, however, wasn't ready to give up. He narrowed his eyes, annoyed by his companion's hesitation. "You're cowards, it's just a dog," he shouted, trying to regain control of the situation. Without warning, the man took a step forward, and Max reacted instantly. With a powerful leap, he tore the collar from Anna Clara's hands and positioned himself directly between her and the men. His bark echoed like thunder through the street, and the attackers retreated in panic. "Get out of here, you beast!" the leader screamed, picking up a piece of wood he found nearby. Max wasn't intimidated. He stood still, baring his teeth, and his gaze showed something beyond mere animal instinct. It was as if he was assessing every movement, every intention. The years of police training were evident in his calculated stance. He wouldn't attack without reason, but he also wouldn't back down. Anna Clara, still in shock, tried to regain her voice. "Please, stop this. You don't have to do this," she cried, her desperation evident. The leader's two accomplices were ready to flee, but the man wouldn't relent. He raised the piece of wood, took a step forward, and threatened to strike Max. In that moment, the police dog's instincts kicked in. Max moved with impressive speed. He dodged the attack and then lunged at the man, knocking him down with his full body weight. The leader fell to the ground, crying out in pain, as Max's precise bite forced him to drop the piece of wood. The sound of the impact echoed through the street, and the two other men began to run without looking back. "Stop, you cowards!" the leader shouted, still trying to get up. Max stood over the fallen man, his fierce gaze locked on his opponent. It was as if he was saying, "Try that again, and you'll regret it." The man, visibly shaken, swallowed hard and tried to hide his fear. All right, that's enough," he cried, raising his hands in surrender. Anna Clara, trembling, clung to the nearest post. She had never seen anything like this. Max wasn't just a loyal dog. He was a true warrior, an unstoppable force that would do anything to protect her. "Get out of here and don't come back," she said, her voice finally firm. The man struggled to his feet, gave Max one last look, and limped away, disappearing into the darkness of the street. Anna Clara knelt beside Max and hugged him tightly. My God, Max, what was that? She said, her voice breaking. Max simply licked her hand, as if to tell her that everything was under control now. He returned to her side, calm but still alert. Clara noticed that he was breathing heavily but showed no signs of injury. Her dog was truly a hero. As she tried to collect herself, she heard the sound of quick footsteps. Startled, she turned around but was relieved to see that it was neighbors who had been drawn by the barking and shouting. An older woman, Donna Lourdes, approached with a cell phone in her hand. "I've already called the police. They're on their way," she said, concerned. Clara nodded, still panting. "Everything's fine now. Max took care of it," she replied, stroking the dog's head. As they waited for the police to arrive, Clara realized the gravity of what had happened. Max wasn't just a rescuer. He was living proof that heroes never lose their essence, even when they're abandoned. But why had he been left at a shelter? And why hadn't she been told about his past as a police dog? Questions began to form in her mind as she looked at the loyal companion by her side. When the police siren sounded in the distance, Clara knew that Max's story was just beginning. The police sirens cut through the quiet streets of Jardim das Flores, breaking the early morning silence. Clara still held Max by the collar, though he sat calmly beside her. The neighbors began to gather, whispering about what had happened, while Clara tried to catch her breath. Max remained alert, watching the movements around him as if he knew it wasn't time to relax yet. When the police car pulled up, two officers quickly stepped out. One of them, a tall man with gray hair, approached her with authority. "Good evening, ma'am. We received a call about an attempted robbery. Is everything all right?" he asked, assessing the situation. Before Clara could answer, the second younger officer turned his attention to Max. He paused for a moment, and then, as if something clicked in his memory, he took a surprised step back. "Wait a minute. Is that him?" "It can't be," the young officer said, pointing at Max. The older man turned, confused, and then his eyes widened as he recognized the dog. "Maximus," he murmured, almost unable to believe his eyes. Clara looked at them, fascinated, as the older man crouched down to look at Max. He seemed thrilled, as if he were seeing an old friend. "Do you remember me, boy?" he asked, his voice filled with emotion. Max wagged his tail slightly but remained serious, as if assessing the man in front of him. Clara watched the scene in amazement. "Excuse me, but what's going on?" she asked, trying to understand. The older officer stood up and looked at Clara with a nostalgic smile. "Ma'am, this isn't just any dog. This is Maximus, one of the best police dogs we ever had in our unit. We worked together for years, and he saved countless lives. But I never thought he'd end up here. How did he come to you?" Clara hesitated for a moment before explaining. "I adopted him from a shelter 3 years ago. I didn't know much about his past, but they told me he was special. Now I know they weren't exaggerating." The officer nodded, still impressed. "He's more than special, ma'am. He's a living legend." He looked at Max again, as if reliving the years they had worked together. Meanwhile, another officer began questioning the neighbors and taking down information about the incident. Clara took the opportunity to tell the sergeant what had happened. "3 men tried to surround me. I was terrified, but Max didn't hesitate. He positioned himself between me and them. It was as if he knew exactly what to do." The sergeant smiled proudly. He did know. That kind of training never fades. Maximus was trained to protect, assess threats, and act precisely. He did exactly what he was taught to do. As they spoke, Max seemed to relax, sensing that the situation was under control. Clara looked at him with newfound admiration. "I never imagined he had such an incredible past. He saved my life today. I can't thank him enough." The sergeant placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. "You've already done more for him than you realize, ma'am. He may have been a hero in the past, but what he needed was a home and someone to love him. And you've given him that." Before they could continue, one of the officers returned with news. "We found the 2 accomplices fleeing in an alley. The leader is still at large, but they dropped everything when they heard the sirens." Clara felt a chill run down her spine as she remembered the leader's angry expression before he fled. But she knew Max was there to protect her. She looked at the younger officer, who still seemed fascinated by Max. "He's truly incredible, ma'am. Maximus was a legend in our unit. I'm sure this neighborhood will be safer with him around." The sergeant agreed. looking at Max once more. This isn't just a dog. He's a true hero. He'll never forget his training, but above all, he'll protect those he loves. The conversation was interrupted by a neighbor who called out to Anna Clara. "Miss Anna, is there anything I can do to help?" she asked with genuine concern. Anna Clara smiled and felt a wave of gratitude. "No, thank you. The important thing is that we're okay. Max took care of everything." As the police sirens faded into the distance with the captured robbers, Anna Clara walked home with Max, feeling a mix of relief and pride. She looked at the dog beside her, now relaxed and calm. "Max, you're really a hero, you know that," she said, stroking his head. Max wagged his tail, as if he understood. As they walked on, Anna Clara realized that this night had changed everything. Max wasn't just her buddy, he was living proof that heroes never retire. And she knew that from this night on, he would be known not just in her home, but throughout the neighborhood as the guardian of Jardim das Flores. The next morning, the neighborhood of Jardim das Flores looked different. The news of the attempted robbery and Max's heroism spread quickly among the residents. At every corner, neighbors talked about the police dog who had saved Dona Anna. The once fear-stricken neighborhood was now filled with a sense of security and gratitude. Anna Clara woke up early, still feeling the adrenaline from the previous night. As she looked out the window, she saw a group of children gathered at her gate. Max lay beside her, and when he noticed the movement, he perked up his ears and began wagging his tail. "I think you've got fans, Max," Anna Clara said, smiling as she stroked his head. When she opened the door, the children rushed toward her, and one of them asked with shining eyes, "Is it true he took on 3 robbers all by himself, Miss Anna?" Anna Clara laughed and nodded. "Yes, it's true. But Max isn't just brave. He's also very gentle. You can pet him if you want." Max, always attentive, remained calm as the children approached and touched him carefully, with admiration. To them, he wasn't just a dog. He was a symbol of bravery. Meanwhile, the adults gathered to thank Anna Clara. Dona Lourdes, who had called the police the night before, brought a homemade cake. "For you, my dear, and of course, a special piece for the hero over there," she said, pointing at Max. The day turned into a spontaneous celebration, with Max at the center of attention. But he seemed to take the affection humbly, as if he knew he had simply done his duty. Later, a police car pulled up in front of the house. 2 officers stepped out, one of them holding a plaque. It was Sergeant Oliveira and the young officer who had recognized Max. Anna Clara greeted them at the door. "Miss Anna, we're here to formally thank you," the sergeant began. "Last night, Maximus not only protected you, but also reminded us all what a true hero is." He handed Anna Clara the plaque, which read, "Maximus, an eternal hero. In recognition of your bravery and loyalty, the police pay tribute to you." "It's an honor for us to know that Max is in good hands," the sergeant continued. "He deserves all the happiness in the world, and it seems he's found it with you." The neighbors applauded, and Anna Clara held back tears as she accepted the tribute. Max, sitting beside her, seemed to understand the moment. He sat up tall, as if proud of his new role as the neighborhood's protector. That evening, as she sat on the balcony with Max, Anna Clara reflected on everything that had happened. She had never imagined that this dog, adopted from a shelter, had such a grand history. But now she knew that Max had found a new purpose, just as she had. In the days that followed, Jardim das Flores transformed completely. Max's presence deterred any attempts at crime, and the residents felt safer. The neighborhood regained its tranquility, and Max became a beloved figure, especially for the children who loved hearing stories about his exploits as a police dog. Anna Clara, in turn, felt more connected to the community than ever. Neighbors often visited, bringing treats for Max or simply stopping by to chat. She realized that Max had brought the neighborhood together in a way she could never have imagined. One afternoon, as she walked with Max through the park, she ran into Sergeant Oliveira again. He approached her with a smile. "How's he handling retirement?" the sergeant joked. Anna Clara laughed. "I don't think retirement is a word that applies to Max. He's found a new purpose. He's the guardian of Jardim das Flores." The sergeant nodded, looking at Max with admiration. "Heroes like him never retire, Miss Anna. They just find new ways to protect those they love." As they walked back home, Clara paused at the gate and looked at the sunset, with Max resting beside her. He wasn't just a dog, he was her friend, her protector, and above all, a true hero. And as long as he was there, Jardim das Flores would be a safe place where people could sleep peacefully, knowing that Max was on guard. In that moment, Clara knew one thing for certain: she hadn't saved Max by adopting him. He was the one who had saved her, and with his unmatched courage, loyalty, and heart, he would continue to save everyone around him. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Thanks to our valued viewers, we continue to improve every day. Please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up.